Today we're going to be talking again about AI and healthcare finance, but we're actually going to be talking about it from a legal perspective.
Sometimes the technology you're using in your healthcare company is not created by people who are well-versed in healthcare.
That's why I'm really telling people to crawl, walk, run. Don't use too many at one time.
It will never replace. It should only augment.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Leadership Lab with Asbel Montes. So glad you were able to join us. And today we're going to be talking again about AI and healthcare finance, but we're actually going to be talking about it from a legal perspective. So to that point, I'm so excited to have in studio today Alexandra Farr, who is the general counsel for our company here at Solutions Group that my business partner Brian Choate and I own. I'm so really glad that you joined me today on the Leadership Lab.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and happy to be here. We're also happy to be here with Christian Dior, Prada, and Chanel.
I know. Big names today.
I'm telling you. And anybody that knows us, we like fashion. So it's actually appropriate. We didn't even realize that until we came into studio.
It was kind of a God sign that we ended up in this room.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's been really interesting. Let's give a little bit of background to some of our viewers that may not know who you are, Alexandra. And I probably will fill in some of the details. But tell us a little bit about your background, how you became an attorney, and then how you actually ended up here at Solutions Group. That's a pretty fantastic story.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the introduction. And I'm not assuming anybody will really know who I am. But just to give a little background, I started out, I got my undergraduate degree in applied mathematics from Texas Christian University, actually out here in Fort Worth, which was a phenomenal experience. And TCU was definitely where I first got interested in and gained a fascination with data and kind of all of the different things you could pull from it, all of the policy that you could create from it. That was kind of where that interest kind of began. And while I was at TCU, I had a wonderful opportunity to intern in D.C. with Senator Bill Cassidy, which was a wonderful experience. And I'd always been interested in healthcare. My mom has worked for a company called Acadian Ambulance down in Louisiana pretty much my whole life, as long as I can remember. Has always been heavily involved in policy and advocating on behalf of the healthcare industry. So I knew I wanted to focus in on that during my time on the Hill with Senator Cassidy.
And both your mom and dad are attorneys, right?
Yes, both of them. I really tried hard to not go the attorney route by doing math, and God had other plans. But yeah, so they're both attorneys, and so I had that kind of model growing up my whole life. But yeah, my mom specifically on the healthcare side of things. And so when I got to D.C. and was interning with Senator Cassidy, the humanitarian crisis on the border was going on at the time, and he's a physician himself, and so he was very invested in that and included me in a lot of research for that and kind of looking at the nutrition factors of the countries where refugees were coming from and how that was affecting them when they got to the border and that kind of thing. So it was just really interesting to see his perspective.
Most people don't know this about Senator Cassidy, but he's a very data-driven guy.
Very data-driven.
Like extremely data. As long as I've known him for 15 years, I knew him when he was on the House side of it. But I remember everything. It was always about the data.
Always about the data. And you could tell in all of his meetings that we got to go into, I got to sit in on a lot of really big meetings with influential people, especially in the healthcare industry, and just kind of see how they bounced ideas off of each other. And it was always coming back to the data, whether it was pharmaceuticals or drug prices or whatever was going on at the time. And it was just really interesting to see how his brain worked, especially how quickly it worked, diving into that. But that experience definitely led me to want to apply to law school and to become a lawyer and just dive deeper into healthcare policy and regulations surrounding that. So I ended up at South Texas College of Law in Houston. And that's where I earned my law degree, and I had a phenomenal time there and learned a lot. And it's where I got my first internship with Solutions Group.
That's right.
And started out with y'all. And it was, my first summer was spent in more of a data analytics position, which was fair. I'd only had, a couple semesters behind me.
Using your applied mathematics.
Yes, using my applied mathematics. And it was really fun because it was the summer of 2022, and the No Surprises Act had just come out in January. It had just gone into effect, I should say. And so we were doing a lot of research around that at the time and working with transparency data and kind of learning what we could learn from that and how we could help our client providers with that information, what kind of help we could give from our perspective. And so it was really interesting to be with Solutions Group at that time. It felt like a very change-driven time. My second summer was in more of a legal capacity internship with y'all, and started drafting more contracts and understanding the importance of HIPAA, understanding the importance of business associate agreements, and how so much goes into protecting PHI, especially when you're working with vendors and stuff like that. So that was a really big shift. And then learning a lot about AI at that time was also big, and it kind of influenced my final research project I did during law school. And I wrote a paper on how AI could assist with the staffing shortage that had happened post-COVID in the healthcare industry. And it was just learning a lot about how AI can help, but also the risks that come with it, and how to combat those, and how we should be starting discussions around how to combat those issues. So it was just really interesting. And I got to do that all while interning for Solutions Group. So work and school were kind of combining, and everything was coming together. And when I started full-time as general counsel with Solutions Group, that continued, as well as getting to be a part of big research projects that you graciously gave me with balanced billing laws and how they affect different states and how they're working in different states and that kind of thing, and working on patent projects that we've got going on right now.
And so you've been with us for about a year now.
I think a year today.
For full time already.
Yeah.
Today, look at that. We're doing and that was not even planned to happen as well.
I think I thought about that this morning.
Yeah,
I was like, I think it started a year ago today.
So I've known just a little bit, and we're going to move into some AI stuff or whatever. But I think that the interesting thing is I've known Alex for probably 15 years now, maybe. So her mom and dad, and we've all been really close, but her mom and I used to call her mom my work wife because we used to work together a lot in policy. And her mom is just one brilliant attorney, and so is her dad as a corporate attorney too. So glad you're with Solutions Group, and glad you chose us. We lobbied hard for you to come to, once you finish your intern, to be able to bring you on, and it's been exponential to the growth of our company. So let's talk about artificial intelligence, because that's been kind of the buzzwords. You did some of this stuff, as you just indicated in one of your papers in your final, as you got your Juris Doctorate. Let's talk a little bit about AI and what we're doing as our company. So Brian and I, my business partner and I, did a podcast. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to the podcast that we just did. But we talk about kind of one of the first tools that we kind of implemented, because we were a crawl, walk, run company. We're slow and steady wins the race. And there are some things and tools that we're implementing that really have no downside. They just have all upside, helping with efficiency. And one of them was kind of a note taker. There's a lot of calls that we take. We're on the phone a lot. We have a consulting arm. We have a technology arm that requires a lot of research and study. And so oftentimes we're having to take notes. We have people taking notes. We have assistants taking notes. And this is one area that we felt like, you know what? Now that this new technology is coming out, this could actually shave and give people so much time back that we won't have to hire additional FTEs. And so we decided and looked at a few things. We decided to use Fathom, the Fathom AI product. But before we use that, we, of course, gave it to you as our general counsel.
And I had a lot of questions
to go through that process. So let's talk about some of the things that people should have before they implement a tool, why it's really important, specifically if you're in healthcare finance, and especially the niche that we're in, why it's very, very important that general counsel is involved as you start to explore different AI tools.
Absolutely. I think one of the big things that you always say that I think applies to AI irrespectively is trust but verify. Just
Ronald Reagan's
Ronald Reagan. But always verifying the data that your AI machine is generating responses from. From a note taker perspective, it's verifying that you have the right protections in place, that you have, that everything is HIPAA compliant, that it follows all of the technology security things that you need to be following whenever you're using an AI tool, especially whenever you're inadvertently sometimes even talking about patient PHI in a meeting and stuff like that. So I made sure to contact someone from Fathom. I wanted to speak to a person. And I said, hey, we are handling a lot of private information constantly, and we want to use your tool. We think it could be great. I just need to make sure that our clients' information are protected, and we are protected in that process as well. And they were very accommodating, and they put together a BAA, a business associate agreement. And for those who don't know what that is, it's basically an agreement you have in place to protect patient PHI that you're receiving from your client providers. And so we wanted to have those same protections in place with our AI note taker to make sure that we were being compliant and doing everything that we needed to do our due diligence to keep that safe and in place. So I think that would be my number one recommendation, is to make sure when you're using tools like Fathom to have those protections in place, but to also understand, even with those protections in place, when to use and when not to use it.
And we took a conservative approach. So let's talk about what we don't allow. Some people may not follow the same piece, but we're crawl, walk, run.
Yes.
Because we're concerned about some of the implications because of the unknown still. So we're still testing it through. But let's talk a little bit about that, of what we're doing.
Yeah. So we take a very conservative approach, and I'm always err on the side of caution, especially because AI is so new and these note taker apps are so new. And there are things that can be discoverable in certain lawsuits. So like, for example, if you and I are on a call and you and I are both under NDA, we have a BAA protecting Fathom. If we are on a call and we're discussing one of our clients and we say, oh, they're doing XYZ billing practice incorrectly, we need to fix this, or they're doing this wrong, that summary that the AI note taker creates can be discoverable in a lawsuit against the company we're talking about. It doesn't matter that you and I are under NDA. It doesn't matter that the BAA is in place. So just being cognizant of, okay, we're talking about some things that we might need to implement for our clients later on. Maybe we don't use the note taker right now because this is private information about one of our clients, and they won't be happy if that information is dispersed in a note summary or something like that. So just making sure that while it is a great tool to have and it can reduce 80% of your workload when it comes to note taking, especially on the admin side, making sure you're understanding where it brings value and when not to use it.
And I think it's important to have policies and procedures around it.
Absolutely.
And so when we create a policy and procedure. And then even at our staff meetings, every once in a while, Alex will get in there. We'll do a reminder, because everybody needs a reminder.
Absolutely.
And if we see it, we hold each other accountable. We all do it. We all need it and say, "Oh, can you stop the Fathom AI?" Or can you? So those are different things that we work out. We also use Zoom AI too. So that's another thing that you have to be cognizant of and front as you're starting to explore them. So that's why I'm really telling people to crawl, walk, run. Don't use too many at one time. Explore 2 or 3 of them. Get them locked down,
be comfortable with them,
comfortable, and then move on to the next ones as you start working through the process and how you use AI. Now, I'm going to kind of flip the subject here. I'm going to go to something that we've had a conversation about, and it's probably not, and because we had an outline here. So, but I'm going to kind of switch things up a little bit. But let's talk about Alex from the perspective of people using AI to understand, for instance, legal documents. There's a lot of discussion saying, oh, I don't have to hire a paralegal. AI can replace the paralegal side of it.
Don't do that.
And so that's why I'm asking you from general, because I know the attorneys, several of my friends who are attorneys have a whole different perspective about that. And I think it's warranted to understand and how you should use AI in the connection with when you're researching legal things like that.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that I learned when I was doing my paper in law school is that one of the biggest fears surrounding AI is it going to replace? Is it going to replace certain workforces? And all of my research came back around, especially in the healthcare industry, it will never replace. It should only augment. And so you should only use it in an augmented fashion. And so using it to replace a paralegal, for example, I wouldn't suggest that. Because certain tools, ChatGPT, for example, if you ask it what its biggest strength is, it will say, my biggest strength is giving responses based on fact and imaginative data. And so understanding that, verifying where your data source is coming from, there have been instances where if you ask ChatGPT, hey, is there case law surrounding XYZ that will prove this element in my case, or that will make my client look correct in this situation? And ChatGPT will say, yes, absolutely. Here's a case from 2011 that was decided by Judge so-and-so in the state of whatever in this district. And it will give you all of the information. And you're like, amazing, great. I'm so glad that I got this information. If you plug that case into a law library, there's a good chance it does not exist. And it could be created from this imaginative data that ChatGPT has created. Or
that actually happened painfully for an attorney that went to court.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot of appellate attorneys that are getting sanctioned left and right because they're using information from ChatGPT that does not exist. And so it's really important to verify that. And then there's other situations where using ChatGPT as a research tool is a great starting point. It's a great starting point for research. I would never let it dictate your entire research process. For example, if you ask it, in California, how many days do I have to appeal a denial of a claim? And it'll spit out a number, say 100 days, whatever it is. And then you say, okay, can you point me to the statute in California that gives this 100-day outline? And it will literally reply back to you, after further research, there is no statute that says this, but this number is based on averages, based on states like California and stuff like that. So it's just always important to not take the first answer verbatim every time and understand where it's coming from.
And I think the statement that you just made is very important for our listeners to understand that are listening to that, is if you're using ChatGPT to do some research for you, is you need to verify it and use these simple tools, because you're exactly right. It comes back and says, upon further research, we cannot get to that. I remember I had a client send me something, they're like thinking, is this accurate? That was their question. Can you verify we got this information? They got it from some type of technology vendor. But when I read it at first, I'm like, this doesn't sound right. From what I knew about, like I'd already known some stuff of research that I had done, but this was before AI. I'm like, this doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
And when I started researching, sure enough, they had gone in, did their research via chat. It was very obvious. Yes. It was about 80% correct, and they actually gave it to a client as substantive information.
Yeah.
And to me, I mean, we went back, and I actually used this. I used this in a webinar, didn't count, and actually showed them the AI generate, and then the actual, what was real after we had done the research, put it together into an actually objectionable memo back to our client, kind of sourcing it out.
Yeah.
They were about 80% correct, but they weren't, and they missed several things.
Yeah.
And so that's where you have to be very, very clear. And that's what you're talking about, is make sure that you're sourcing. If you're using it, use it, because it's going to help with your research.
It absolutely, it's a quick way to start, because sometimes you just don't even know where to begin to look. And so I think it's a great tool to say, hey, where should I look if I'm trying to find XYZ? And it will probably spit out answers to whatever question you're asking it as well. But it will also be like, oh, here's the statute. And sometimes I'll look at the statute and I'll be like, oh, sure enough, it's written right here in this rule, or it's written right here in this case. But sometimes it'll say something and then link a statute, and the statute has nothing to do with whatever it said. And it's just giving you a source because you asked for one. So it's just always double checking, always verifying what you're receiving from these tools. Absolutely.
So as you've been diving into, and I know we've kept you really busy here at Solutions Groups, and you're just learning a ton of different things and bringing so much great stuff to us.
It's a great environment to learn in.
as our company, because as a technology company, of course, we're always adapting and innovating. We do not protect and preserve here at Solutions Group. We're all about opening up the hood and working through it. Yeah. But also because I'm a creative soul, but just by nature, and I just think differently. Brian, my business partner, is very much like he's into the detail. Like we are perfect yin and yang from a construct, and we're actually best friends as well. But it's very important that we have general counsel that constantly is asking a myriad of questions. And I've always said it's your responsibility to make sure we don't land in a landmine.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand something, you ask that question. No matter if my personality is type A or not, you ask those questions and never apologize for asking those questions, because I rely on you to make sure. And so in this AI journey that we're on, I'm heavily relying, as we look at stuff before we implement it, has Alex signed off on it? And if she comes back and says, you know what, let's test this cautiously first. Let's not do this. So tell me about, tell our viewers a little bit about who are thinking about this, who are exploring. There's several that are watching this. They're just gung-ho. They've jumped into the AI pool.
Yeah.
And this is where I get a little concerned looking a year down the road, that there's going to be a lot of issues that are going to arrive in the healthcare arena. That is going to be costly for some providers, payers, whoever you are that's forging into, especially if you're just entering into this from an innovation standpoint. What are some of those things that individuals that are listening to need to be thinking about as they're exploring these AI tools?
Not to repeat myself, but I think the trust but verify thing is always going to be my number one. Just making sure that you're verifying everything that your tool is using to give you responses. Number two, I would say having those safeguards in place like we discussed, making sure that any AI you're using is HIPAA compliant, that you have BAAs in place where they need to be in place, that you're protecting your PHI. And then piggybacking off of that, thirdly, understanding when and when not to use it, kind of like we talked about. Scrubbing PHI if you need to. If you're using ChatGPT, we've done this before where we'll use ChatGPT to create a bullet pointed list of, key takeaways from certain documents that we're using, but we're scrubbing PHI, we're de-identifying, we're using made up scenarios because you never want to put that into the ether. And so that would be my third point. Fourthly, I would say never let it be your decision maker. Never let AI be your decision maker. Always use it in an augmented fashion. Use it as an assistant. Use it to, make complex payer policies into plain language for patients to understand. Using it like in those situations is really good, but don't let it tell you when you should be billing under Medicare rules, when you should be denying claims. Don't let it make those decisions. You have experts in your company that are built for that you have trained for that, and that you trust. And so I would say that. And then from a fifth perspective, all of that being said, document your use of AI in your company so that if an audit comes around, you know what you're doing, and you've said, hey, this is where we're using it and this is how we've been safe. So even if you're doing something wrong, you've done your due diligence and you haven't done anything negligently. And so you said, we've done all of this with our patient's best interest in mind, and understanding that there are safeguards that need to be in place.
These are great 5 points that you just listed. Yeah. But I want to pack point number 3 a little bit, because that is a question that I'm hearing a lot as I'm going throughout, speaking a lot across the nation in a lot of healthcare conferences, is around PHI. Mm-hmm. And number 1 is ChatGPT, because it is open AI. Mm-hmm. And that is what my business partner and I talked on a previous podcast of the reason why it's probably getting so much relevance now is once they opened it up for anybody to use, mm-hmm. it became like the World Wide Web.
Right.
At that point, World Wide Web 30, 35 years ago.
Yeah.
But now ChatGPT is the open AI, so anybody can source if you want to use it. So anything that you upload, anything is forever out there, and that is the issue of PHI.
And they use that information for other people as well, and so it can come back around. It self-learns itself as well.
And that's what I think people are important. So you shouldn't be using any type of protected health information in an open AI engine. No. Now, there are some AI tools, they're not open AI engines. And this is where the PHI becomes really, so I know we talked briefly about that, but that is a question that a lot of people are going to listen. They don't, to you, they don't have general counsel. They might be a small physician's office that doesn't have access to general counsel. They want to explore it, to try to look at it. So they're actually getting some free legal advice right now. And that's kind of what I want to give them. Give them some points to maybe point them in the right direction. Of course, we can't give legal advice, right. Or you can't from your perspective, but we can kind of tailor people that might be, we want to do it. I'm a little nervous about it, but where should you jump? But when it talks about PHI, talk about the difference between using like a ChatGPT or a Grok style type AI engine to something that you might actually pay for, own, very similar to what we went through with Fathom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the difference between an open AI system and something that you're using in your company that's looking at EHR, looking at PHI every single day, most of those companies will have listed on their website, if you're using an AI tool like Fathom or something like that, will say which certifications they have. And so when I went on Fathom's website, it was like, oh, we're HIPAA compliant, we have SOC 2, all this kind of stuff. And so they've listed that out. And I was like, okay, great, that checks something off my list. But I still wanted to have that one-on-one conversation with someone from their department that said, hey, and I explained certain situations that we deal with at Solutions Group on a daily basis where private information is being shared between us, especially because we're a completely remote company. I was like, I need to make sure these protections are in place to protect us and to protect our clients. And if you're a provider, it's to protect you and your patients, because your patients' PHI, that's what they're worried about. So I would just strongly encourage people to work with their legal teams and make sure their legal teams are having the necessary discussions with the owners of these non-open AI systems that they're using in their departments to make sure that you can put BAAs in place, that you can put the necessary safeguards around your technology, because I think it's a great tool. and it won't work unless it has access. It won't work as efficiently or as accurately without access to PHI, without access to EHR whenever you're using it in your company. So I think it's a great tool, but just making sure that you are constantly looking back and being compliant and making sure it's part of your compliance that you're looking at that.
And I think you make a really good point here, and I'm going to speak to the leaders of the organizations that you're running. That if you're if you're a physician and maybe you're running your own private practice, or you're a hospital CEO or CFO, but if you're a billing director, if you're a VP of your operations, whatever it is in whatever healthcare sector that you're in, you need to begin to think about, and this is you need to have almost like an AI officer.
Yes.
And it needs to be a part of your compliance team. And I'm going to say officer in question mark because they could run on two, could have two different hats or whatever. But you need to have someone that is the AI individual. You're our AI person.
Yes.
Like anything that's AI, it's like Alex has to sign off on it before we'll implement it. I am not signing off on anything of introducing a tool until Alex has signed off on it, because she knows the questions to ask. Because not every AI or technology company is going to represent themselves correctly. Yes, I would like to think that everybody's a good actor, but not everybody's a good actor.
Right.
Some people are selling things and saying they're doing things that they're not actually doing it. Unless you ask the right questions, that's the only way that you can suss it out to say, no, they're not. Because we've learned this the hard way as a company. I've learned this hard way when I don't trust my gut or my instinct. Generally, my gut is now correct. So I will always follow it now. Like even somebody could say to me, my gut tells me something's off here. I don't even know what, but something's off. And I will tend to go with my gut now. But as AI is so new and there's so much coming in here, I think it's really, really important. If you do not have legal counsel, if you're somebody and you're running your own healthcare entity right now and you're just not sure, and I get it. Some people just don't. I've worked for companies before that didn't have general counsel. They had outside general counsel that they only used when they needed it because of the expense related. This is an expense that I would strongly suggest don't implement AI unless you've been able to substantiate it through either a legal consultant,
someone who's well versed in the AI
that understands this piece of it.
And I think another thing too is that some of these tools, they're created by humans, and so they have inherent biases and all of that good stuff, which is important to remember. But sometimes the AI, the technology you're using in your healthcare company is not created by people who are well-versed in healthcare. And so you might have questions that they've never thought about either. And that might come up whenever you're having these discussions about the tools you're using. And so it might be something that you're like, okay, well, you haven't thought this through, thanks. We'll try something else. And so then you move on. But that also like benefits them in the long run because then they will adjust and move forward as well.
Well, I know our team, and we talked about this when I was doing a podcast about AI with my business partner, is that, we have two of our employees that were doing some and some of them that they omitted because they couldn't answer the questions about the healthcare side of it. Right. And that's a good point that you just brought up here as well. I'm going to switch topics and let's talk about fraud, waste, and abuse.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about fraud, waste, and abuse, number one, in the AI space, because I am a little bit concerned about that. And we do know that with the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill under the Trump 47 administration, there's a lot of discussion that we're hearing about fraud, waste, and abuse in the healthcare industry. Right. I think while there's fraud in every industry. Generally, it's the exception. Right. Not to minimize it, but generally the exception. Generally, what we'll see is waste and abuse. Mm-hmm. It's maybe there are better ways to do something, so there's not so much waste in it. Or there's abuse. A patient was seen, but maybe you coded it differently so you can get more reimbursement, what they call upcoding or maximizing your coding, or what have you. But AI has the ability to suss that out, make things more transparent. These are probably some of the good things of AI, of how you're looking at it. Maybe there's issues. I mean, this happened to the payer industry when they got, that they saw these bonuses that they were getting because some of them are under lawsuits and clawbacks because of all these bonuses that they were paid, and now there's accusation that they upcoded a lot of things. Yeah. But it was the AI tools that began to bring that out, and some blame it was AI doing it. And I can believe that. Like there was a machine learning AI tools that were probably doing to create efficiency so people didn't have to look at it, denying claims inappropriately, asking for prior authorizations because it's agents doing this, AI is doing this. And so these are some of what I call the negative aspects of AI. And so let's talk through from a legal perspective, really specifically more to the fraud, waste, and abuse side of it, is what could possibly be those things that healthcare providers need to pay attention to, or healthcare finance, to make sure that they're not, unfortunately, be a casualty of something, waste and abuse in some type of audit when they're using AI tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, I think sharpen your compliance programs. Make sure that your clinical and billing documentation is consistent, accurate, shows medical necessity. That's becoming a big factor in the fraud, waste, and abuse initiative that we're seeing CMS come out with. And I think that's all important. And the best way to do that is by having an internal or an external or a third-party audit come in and making auditing a day-to-day activity and not just something that's on a checkbox that you kind of do every once in a while. I think it's going to become really important. I read this in an article the other day, and it said it best. It was like, providers need to get their houses in order so that when the government comes knocking, they have an explanation. Because sometimes you're coding things differently, but it's a feature of habit, and it's not because you're intentionally doing something. So if an audit brings that up and shows you that error, then you can be like, oh, we need to have an explanation for this. And just kind of pinpointing the pieces of your compliance where you're saying, okay, we're doing everything right, or here's an error, and not just using the audit to find errors in your compliance, but actually using that information to fix the problem. And one of the biggest issues is there's a lack of communication between revenue cycle teams and legal. And there's no communication on, okay, we've found the issue, let's fix it. And that's when you've committed a knowing fraud. And that's when you've committed, and fraud, waste, and abuse, and the legal ramifications of that can be extensive. And so I think that's a really important piece of it. And then training your staff, like having more staff training to recognize red flags of what looks like fraud, waste, and abuse whenever you're going through your day-to-days as well.
And I think you bring up a really good point about the auditing side of it. And you'd think we'd planned this, but I don't even remember planning this or whatever. But this is why we have brought to market, we actually have a patent pending on a tool, an audit tool, what we call the life of a claim audit. Mm-hmm. So not just looking at it through the window of how a federal payer would look at, we look at the entire life of a claim to see, is there some inefficiency there? Is there any type of risk that you might have that you're not aware of?
Right.
Maybe you implemented an AI tool and thinking, oh my God, I've got a risk here. I didn't realize that. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes we say, well, we audit our stuff internally. But I liken it to like having audited financials. You bring in somebody like a Deloitte or an Ernst & Young or somebody else to do an audited financial on you so you could understand, where are my pain points? Where are my issues? Where are things where I'm not following GAAP principles? This is the same thing that we've done, is to say, in your billing department, how do you know where your risks are, to go through a tool that takes you through the life of the claim to say, oh, I implemented an AI tool in my cash posting department.
Right.
But I didn't realize that AI engine has been writing something off that they shouldn't have been writing off. Now I have a compliance issue. Right. And generally, when people have like medical record audits, that's not going to uncover that type of issue. Right. And now with AI being introduced, you've got governments using AI tools to come across multiple databases now to try to identify things where there used to be some of us out there. I remember 20, 25 years ago, I've been doing this in the industry where I'm just thinking, well, you know what, they're a small market. If you're doing less than 25,000 patient encounters a year, the likelihood, you're probably not a target. They're going to be looking at the larger guys. Not anymore.
No.
The new AI, the way they're using AI tools now, it doesn't matter. That literally has gone off. So if you're under that same premise and living under that same premise, it's probably really important for you to understand why it's really important to take a preventive, like they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
And that is true, as we're talking about fraud, waste, and abuse as well. As we're winding down, anything to add to that?
I think you hit all the points. I mean, I think you said an ounce. With AI being used so much, the risk for breach and like security invasions to happen, we've seen that being a problem everywhere. And, even personally, like with clients that we work with, and it's devastating. And I think that the more you're implementing AI, the more I think cost effective wise, it is worth it to do those audits more often and to have those situations be happening more often, because it's just going to help prevent more in the future.
And prevention. It's prevention, it's risk mitigation, those type of things that are individuals like you. Those are your sweet buzzwords. Like, we've got to mitigate risk, but we wouldn't need lawyers. If we were always mitigating risk, we wouldn't need lawyers, right?
Exactly.
Unfortunately, that doesn't happen, so we need lawyers to keep us in check. I usually like to ask this of everybody that joins me on my podcast, and I'm going to ask you, if you looked in your crystal ball a year from now, related to AI, the legal aspects and legal implications or the legal risks that we might have with the use of AI, what would you say, if you looked in your crystal ball, that we as healthcare providers need to pay attention to as we continue to go down this adoption of AI?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I know it's loaded, putting you on the spot because I didn't prepare you for this,
it's
but
okay.
I wanted that.
I think from a legal perspective, the more AI becomes a standard part of our day-to-day, the more legal laws there will be surrounding it. And so I think it will be important to pay attention, and I think it will be really important for lawyers, for Congress, for people creating laws surrounding its use to really be paying attention to how it's being used. And I would like more structure around it. That can create a lot more administrative burden whenever you're trying, kind of a nightmare whenever you're trying to implement it into your system. But I think it will eventually make things as safe as they can be. And that's what I'm most looking forward to, is making it a safer, because it will increase efficiency and it will increase workflow and it will increase providers getting revenue that they're owed because your claims will be cleaner and all this good stuff. But just the risk inherent in it for more breaches available to hackers, I would really like to see more law surrounding the area so that we can follow it more closely and just have a better understanding of the best way to implement it into our systems.
So to that point, I know I was going to ask you the last question, but you just made my brain go off. So I want to ask this question, because in the One Big Beautiful Bill, as they were doing the debate, AI came up in that. That was a big issue. And the feds wanted to take that over, kind of take it away from the states, the ability to govern anything relative to that as well. And that was met with a lot of opposition. The House passed it, came to the forefront that they, I think, pretty much gave 10 years to the federal government.
Oh, wow.
And so there was a lot of went back and forth with the Senate side of the House. And because of your background, also understanding policy, I'm a policy wonk, doing it for it as well, but generally haven't got into this whole AI space. But there was a lot of concern because AI can be much different in how it's used in the state of Texas, where we are, to where the state of Georgia is versus the state of California versus the state of New York, different actors at place, things like that. When you talk about in a year, if you're looking at your crystal ball, there's going to be a lot more involved, because I agree with you on that. I think this is something that we're going to start seeing. Bad actors come in, the laws got to be put into place, but after that, you're reacting.
Right, and we need to be responding.
Yeah, and so talk through what you think about that. To me, I think it should be kept more at the states, because AI could look a little bit different. I know we're looking at continuity, so federal, let the feds do it, so it's continuity across all 50 states. But are there instances by state where continuity may not be the best thing?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I would leave it to the states. This is something where I feel like I could use AI to point me in the direction for some research. But
yeah, that's actually good, because it's like I'm surprising you with the question, which tells you how new it is in its infancy, and the discussion that we're beginning to see on that, where more attorneys, such as we've got to get more actively engaged in the process to understand the marriage of the two.
Absolutely. I think from a basic standpoint of just hearing about it, I think I would leave it to the states, because like you said, laws are so different state to state, especially in the healthcare space. We see it all the time with different states having balanced billing laws, not having balanced billing laws, and those laws looking different wherever you go. And also just provider laws, and doctors have to take a board exam for every state and that kind of thing too. So why wouldn't you want the AI you're using in your physician practices to have state laws that surround that area as well? So it makes sense to my brain that you would want the states to have control over AI and to be creating laws surrounding it as well. The question that I would have is, do we have people qualified to be making those laws in every state? We need to make sure that we're having people on certain boards involved in making those rules, because if you're making it based on a very basic like a very high level understanding of how AI works, it could create a lot of issues as well.
And I think your last statement sums it up, and we're going to leave it with there, because that to me is the key, probably one of the most impactful statements that was just made, is do we have the right people at the state level? And that has always been the concern.
Right.
Is generally why sometimes things try to be managed at the federal level versus the state level, because while one state may be able to do it, another state may struggle because they don't have the right subject matter experts at the table to govern it. So that was a very, for me to surprise you with that last question, such an astute response. So Alex, thank you for joining me today on the Leadership Lab. Very insightful. Hopefully you learned something. If you did, if you didn't, if there's something that you disagreed with that we said, leave it in the comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say as well. So thank you for joining us on the Leadership Lab today.
Thanks.